Christine Noble-Seller says she's available to co-host if you need help.
Thank you, but I'd rather just.
I know.
And we're live.
Good morning. It's Shannon MacArthur calling here from Crestone, Colorado, the heart of the Rockies. In the third of 7 sparkling conversations in which presenters from Humanity Rising are going to be speaking together about a very important subject, inspired by the theme of the summit today, peace, justice, and economics. We're going to be talking about getting along with others. Today, we'll explore how everything in our reality, from the smallest particles to the largest celestial objects, depends on and affects one another. We'll dive into how our internal state impacts peace, justice, and economics, and what we can learn from animals, ancient wisdom, and each other about living in harmony. Our panelists bring diverse perspectives to this conversation, and I'm excited for us to be learning from them. I'm going to introduce each of the panelists very shortly, and then they each have 10 minutes to introduce themselves and share their initial thoughts on this theme. I'm going to first invite Erica K. Webster. She is a veteran of the Stonewall Rebellion and a lifelong human rights activist. She brings a perspective shaped by resilience and advocacy. Erica, how do you see the importance of getting along with others in today's world?
Well, I feel as though we are all being called to remember that we are not others, that we were created in unity. And it's a matter of rejoining the divine mind, to which we're all microcosms, a portion within the divine mind, the source energy that created all of us. So for me, it's been a learning experience to see the unified brothers and sisters and all beings as unified with each other, and to move to our highest order of being here in the human form on Earth. Lisa, I didn't see your entire question, but I'll do my best while I'm speaking to answer it. And for me, it's been a very long journey and a process of losing ego and learning to pool our energy. And it began with the search for a most perfect love. I have memory and came with memory of being with the ancient ones in between incarnations. And I remember the instructions, but I didn't start off remembering all of the instructions. I had memories, but they were much more vague. And they began to develop to a point where I finally realized that what I had been searching for throughout my lifetime already existed within me. And through that process, a new process began. What is peace? How do we bring peace here on Earth? And I received a download reminding me that all that exists within source energy is perfect peace, because there are no judgments, no condemnation. All of the learned beliefs here in human form that we've been fed throughout most of our lives is not true. And remembering what is true, that within source energy, all that exists is peace. And as I see all my friends and relations, which we are all related to each other, we are all indigenous in human form. To be gentle in my thoughts with others, to reach out to them without my own ego in the way, and totally surrendering, becoming that most perfect love myself, and to find perfect peace within myself, so that in all conversations and in the co-creative process, that I am creating from the highest good for all concerned, with harm to none, as we work together, and how we treat each other and how we see each other. It's a word that I don't often use. Is to come from the highest intent without judgment, and seeing the divine source within every being, sentient and insentient, and allowing that love to flow with compassion, and remembering that many of us are still asleep or in the process of awakening, but have not fully awakened. And until we can learn to see the divinity within all of us, then we become the us and not the other.
Thank you so much, Erica. I look forward to hearing more from you. The perfect love. Yeah, thank you so much. Next, I would like to introduce Ken Cohen. He is a traditional healer with deep ties to Indigenous wisdom, connects ancient teachings with modern challenges. Ken, what can ancient wisdom teach us about peace and getting along with each other?
Thank you, Shannon, for that introduction. And it's an honor to be here with all of you. Of course, I'm sure each of our panelists are thinking, well, how do I fit within 10 minutes what I've learned through my lifetime about getting along with others, about peace, and about justice? So let's see where this goes. I think the main thing is that we each speak from the heart and from our own personal experiences. I'd like to start, however, by noting something that I've seen in an email about this event, that this is I believe, the 30th anniversary of the birth of the white buffalo calf. Now, there are white buffalo calves. They're a rarity. I think it's about 1 in every million or so births is white. And it is considered a very special spiritual sign when one is born. But this particular calf that was born 30 years ago was seen in vision by many respected native wisdom keepers as being a sign that the spirit of the white buffalo calf woman, the spirit of beauty, spirit of the sacred, was somehow returning. However, here's another part of the story you may or may not be aware of, there were then a series of other white buffalo births. There were so many that this was more than just an anomaly. It became a warning. So it's a time to really be careful, because we have a possibility of indeed creating a better home, a better world to live in, thinking of the future generations, or it could go a very different direction. So I'd like to start by basically, well, two things. One is that the message of the white buffalo, to me, is really expressed in the teachings of the white buffalo calf woman. And relevant to our conversation, she said to make every step a prayer. Her story shows that we need to rid ourselves of greed and respect women as spiritual leaders. So these are three important things for getting along with others. And I'd like to share a song. I'm going to do this without a drum or rattle because our audio settings in this meeting might not pick up the sound properly. I'm not a singer, by the way, but I do love to sing. So the song is this. Kayaskate kepetwichik pimatisawin ipimikuyak hamati kwa chimatan pasqua musto swea heyo. I'll sing it just that one time. Normally in ceremony, we would sing it 4 times. What that song means is a long time ago, the elders foretold that life would be brought to us. Now let us honor in a sacred manner this life, Pasqua Mustos, the buffalo. So again, I wanted to start with that song. How do we get along with others? We're thinking a lot about this. I think it requires having the courage to recognize and heal one's own shadow. We can't get along with others unless we're getting along with ourselves. Having the courage to face our shadows and trauma and hopefully learn from them, learn how to move perhaps beyond them, and getting along with others. Under others, I'd like us to include all of our relatives on our beautiful Mother Earth, all of nature, the plants, the stones, the animals, the birds, the fish, all of nature, as well as getting along with and learning from our dreams, our sources of spiritual guidance, what some people might call our spirit helpers. And also part of this inner exploration that allows us to get along with others is finding your life purpose, what my Haudenosaunee brothers and sisters call your original instructions. Then having the courage to live it and express it. Because if you have a gift, if you discover that gift, but you keep it locked up inside, then that very gift can become a source of illness. So we have the obligation, you could say, to discover that gift, and then we need to find the courage to live it and express it. And at the same time that we want to learn from our shadows and trauma, our difficulties and challenges in life, we also, at least in my opinion, we want to listen to the call from the future. That is not to assume that who we are is only a result of our past experiences. I think this is a trap many people fall into. Yes, learn from your past, but also find out what are we doing that might block the call to a better future. And finally, I would say to get along, at least from an Indigenous perspective, one of the big helps along this path is knowing wisdom keepers and elders who are teachers and models of getting along with others. of harmonious and ethical behavior. I've been very blessed in my life that I've known many such elders and have trained with them. What kind of teachings? I know I may be getting close to my time. I hope someone will give me a signal. But what kind of teachings are these when I say elders or wisdom keepers that are models of those teachings? Let me give you one contextual example, and that is the knowledge that was represented by putting up a Cree Indian teepee. First of all of those teepee poles depend on each other, right? They're all balanced together. So that means we depend on and find strength from each other. And yet we all branch out from one common point. We all branch out from the same creator. And then in the Cree teepee, there are 15 poles. Those poles each carry a teaching. So in the old days, when you would sit in that teepee, you were reminded of those teachings, of what was necessary for peace, for justice, for getting along with others. The first pole was obedience to tradition. And this would also imply in English, I think, being a good listener. Did you know that the term obedience is from the Latin ob audience, a state of complete listening? One of my elders used to say we're born with 2 ears and 1 mouth because we're supposed to listen at least twice as much as we speak. Second teepee pole, respect for all of life. Third teepee pole is humility. The fourth is happiness. Happiness is also a virtue and so important. The fifth pole is love. And I would say all forms of love. Love for our partner, love for our children, love for our traditions, love for the earth. Sixth pole is faith. Seventh pole is kinship, the sense of relationship that we're all family. The eighth pole is cleanliness, a kind of purity, you could say, of mind and body, living without, as much as possible, without any ulterior motives, being very direct, very honest. I would include integrity in cleanliness. Ninth pole is thankfulness. 10th pole is sharing. 11th is strength. The 12th is good child rearing. 13th is hope. 4th is protection. That is, in modern terms, you could say having appropriate boundaries, yes. And the 15th pole represents the control flaps that control smoke and warmth in the teepee. And it represents connectedness, interdependence, and balance. So we can see that, the concept of justice and of getting along is, it's so important, and I find very deep within indigenous cultures, because one final thing, that ethical and just behavior doesn't result from adhering to rigid laws. Okay, to me, that's the sort of Western concept, or coercion, or fear of punishment, or fear of the power of a higher authority, but rather getting along and justice results from self-knowledge and a commitment to harmony, beauty, and blessing, what our Navajo relatives call the path of Hosho. So I think I'm probably at about my time.
Yes, you certainly are, Ken. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
I
much.
imagine growing up surrounded by the teepee poles and hearing that story from my parents. What a lovely environment to grow up in. Thank you so much for bringing that. I look forward to hearing more from you as we go on. At this point, I'd like to introduce Jan Byers. Has a deep experience in leadership and change, and she'll guide us in understanding how internal wholeness can impact external peace. Jan, how does our internal state influence how we get along with others? Please activate your mic. Come on in. Thank you.
It comes down to, if you're not in a state of peace, we tend to send out our anger, frustration, impatience, whatever those things are. So for me, coherence is really important, and it's a physical state, right? It's medical, you can measure it. And in my experience working with people who are really out of balance, they need some practical things. So my 10 minutes here is going to be much more practical. I have a strong spiritual base, but I'm going to talk more from a practical perspective today. So I'm going to talk about peace, justice, and economics, and a couple of different psychological terms and how those measure together, flip together. So I've been working with a concept called holding environment. Psychology, been in the 40s, it's been around a long time, still used. And basically it says that what's the environment that we're in, whether it's nurturing, excuse me, or harassing or critical or whatever, we're soaking that in. We're completely surrounded by it. And if you don't have that internal sense of peace, you can't manage it. So it was my job when I was a clinician to hold an environment. It's an expectation in psychology and any of the mental health practices. You have to hold the environment for your patients. When we're consciously creating it, we use it to help people heal faster, help people get insight, help people develop and grow in ways that will be helpful to them. In business, this is called culture. Ironically, in culture, not only is it not required for you to do something, you can't. It's this belief that we can't touch culture, that we can't change it. And the reason that they think that is because it doesn't happen out there. Culture, holding environment is an internal, it's directly related to our internal state. And working with others, of course, actually literally syncing with them and training with them to create an environment for positive outcomes, as you would define that in a situation. So these two concepts are basically seen as completely opposite, and yet they're exactly the same. So how do we switch our mental model in a business or organizational perspective that allows us to know that we can shape it versus giving up and saying this is the way it's always been and we can't do anything? So for me, this is peace. That's actually an internal state. When I sit down to meditate, my body just goes into that place. Like my mind can still be spinning a little bit, and I can just feel my body already showing up even before my mind does. When we're in a state of peace, we can listen, right? We can respond. Our clarity of thought is better. We're not reactive. It's all these really practical things that are important for us to actually be able to create peace. Another critical point is I believe peace is created internally. Change isn't created internally. All these concepts we're talking about today begin from an internal place. I presented this many times. The average person still doesn't get it. And it's changed a lot in the last 20 years, but it's not sinking in. So the mindfulness movement that we have now is an attempt to try to calm us down, try to bring us in a little bit. But if we're not actually shifting that heart rate variability, we're not actually bringing our heart and lungs working together, it's harder to sustain. And what we need is an internal state that we can sustain, that we can do when we've been in a car accident or somebody just yelled, or like, how do we hold during the tough times, not 2 minutes after we got out of our meditation? For me, justice is about both accountability and kindness, right? I used to work with federally adjudicated youth. Some of them, you could see that glimmer of hope where you could kind of call to their soul and bring them back. And we taught them all the skills. We showed them how to do everything. We helped hold an environment for their healing. And then there were others, they were going to turn into antisocial personalities because what had been done to them was so severe that they did not care. And I don't mean like a little bit don't care. I mean, they did not care. So again, even in a very difficult situation, my job was to hold the environment. These two different views are a mental model. Mental models are important. If we don't know what our mental models are, we don't know how we're framing the issue. And we reject people who don't operate from our frame. Like, this is the way you have to look at it. No, it's all out here, right? I work from a concept of undivided wholeness, got that term from Bohm. We're all connected, right? And I don't mean just our people, every atom, every molecule, we are completely and profoundly interconnected. So if that's true, it's much harder to be exclusionary. It's much harder. We can have a mood, we can be irritable, we can not like something or any of those things, but it's hard to actually not feed them or whatever that might be. Economics very much, for me, very much differentiates between greed and capitalism. Capitalism is actually a pretty good thing. It's a great way to create revenue. Adam Smith, 300 years ago, talked about bringing out people's gifts, acting for morality, which was the term back then for ethics. He said ethics are profitable. He wanted us to create small businesses, bring out people's gifts, and generate income to help others. The Friedman doctrine, that's probably what most of you talk about. There's no social responsibility for business. It says it's only there to make money. It's all to the shareholders. We've all heard that. That came about in the 70s. It's the prevailing view for most organizations. So we get a choice on where we spend our money. We can do the B Corps and the organizations with foundations, or there's so many different ways they can organize, but they're out there and they're making a benefit, and they don't think it's just those roads were built for me and I'm going to use them for free. So how do we hold steady and clear? We stay in coherence. We hold the environments that we're in. That could be our family, it could be an organization, it can be any group of people. How do we learn to do that as a skill? It's a very learnable skill. We entrain with others. They hold the field with us. And we create environments where positive outcomes occur. And again, we can't really exclude others because they're part of who we are. So for me, wholeness is our internal state. We interact with wholeness through our heart. Literally, frequency of our heart field is bigger than our mind, our brain, sorry.
Yeah.
And
It
as
is bigger. Oh, sorry.
as
Sorry, carry on.
go ahead, I have a timer on.
Oh,
As
you
we
do?
oh yeah, we switch our, I'm the business person here, right? Like,
Yeah, very. I'm so glad you're here.
So as we do our meditations, and we have all different forms, right? All different kinds of sits or walking meditations, it doesn't matter. And we move into our heart. We stop this, blah, blah, blah. If I'm in my heart, I have all the knowledge that I have in my brain. I have my education, I have my training. I haven't cut myself off from here down like I do if I'm just using my brain. So I have all the capacity that I would have in any normal situation, any reality that we work in. And I remember wholeness. And to me, that's the key to all of those: peace, justice, and economy.
Thank you so much, Jan. I am so grateful that you're here. Your voice is it's so important in this conversation, especially. And as I transition now to the last of our panelists, Christine Noble-Seller, she dedicates her work to giving animals and nature a voice through intuitive interspecies communication. And just before you start, Christine, I want to mention, everybody, my laptop power is about to die. And so I'm going to come back with a different background. I've got my phone. But Christine, how do animals teach us about living in harmony?
Thank you, Shannon. Hello, everyone. I'm grateful to be here with you and to answer that question that you posed, Shannon. I want to wish you a good morning from the flora and fauna on the lands of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. The question, how do we get along? In the emails that Shannon sent out today before the event, she reminded all the panelists that what we do to ourselves, we do to others. So I want to thank Erica, Ken, and Jan for sharing their wisdom and for everyone who's here who's making a difference with their presence. So as Shannon mentioned, I'm a professional intuitive interspecies communicator and I'm an advocate, and I speak with all relations, animals, wildlife, and nature. And I encourage us to look at the power of example of nature, of which we are a part, as well as our current state, which is the disconnect from our human actions and our consultation with the natural world. I'm going to start by sharing my experience for a few minutes, but I really want to focus on sharing nature's messages for the balance and speaking, giving voice to nature. So we all know, if we look at the state of our beloved shared home Gaia, we see humanity's impact. It's on the news every day. And this destruction can feel overwhelming and can cause many people to look away, to shut down, to feel powerless and helpless. This is what I hear from so many. How can I make a difference? How can one make a difference? And this state of mind, this energy frequency affects our inner and outer worlds that have been mentioned. It is our energy that impacts our decisions and our actions. Yet nature that is frequently disregarded in decision-making by humans continues to always respectfully and lovingly remind us about our oneness, interconnectedness, and interdependence with all life. I simply here today to remind us that we, humanity, are part of nature. experience interspecies voices and listen as nature grounds us and shares messages about getting along with others. I invite you to move, shift, and be comfortable, whether you're sitting, lying down, or standing. And if it feels right, to close your eyes and visualize yourself in a beautiful meadow full of vibrant wildflowers. Allow yourself to lie down in this meadow, sinking and resting on the ground, connected to the earth, feeling the heartbeat of the earth, feeling the rhythm and the life cycles of all the animals and beings who walk upon the earth. And now allow yourself to gently sink into the earth, where all the animals that burrow and hibernate support you and greet you as you sink gently and slowly to the center of the earth. Feeling the dark, nourishing soil, the richness of life, supporting life. We are connecting with all the realms, and feel yourself rising from the center of the earth, back up into the meadow, to the wildflowers, and now lifting into the air, into the sky with the winged ones. You are safely supported in the air, the element of air, close to the sun, connecting with the winged beings. And now you float back down towards the earth onto a body of water where your entire being gently floats, buoyant, supported amongst water and all water beings. Returning to the meadow, you lie there and allow animals to step forward, wildlife and nature beings to speak with you. And I will bring forward some voices. The mountain lion, the cougar, the puma, the big cat with many names steps forward and speaks of leadership, of being right within your skin, right within your power, of self-respect, of respecting oneself is respect for all. Step into your power. Eagle is stepping forward. Eagle speaks of soaring high, close to the sun, close to our star ancestors, connected to our cosmic ancestries, to hear the inner voices and guidance that we have from all realms as we are watched over, loved, and guided. And lastly, bear steps forward, out from hibernation, from his self-reflection, from the inner womb of the earth, and asks that you step into the light, to show yourself, to step forward, to bring your energy, to bring your strength, to bring your skills, to allow this to ripple forward everywhere. We give thanks to nature, to bear, to eagle, and to mountain lion for stepping forward with how to get along with others today. And back to Shannon if she is here. Can't hear you though, Shannon. I can see you though.
Need to unmute.
She's working on it. She's transferred to her phone now.
Oh, challenges,
There we go.
challenges. This is so much fun, right? Oh,
Challenge accepted.
And we can
right on.
hear you.
Oh, yay. Oh, this is so exciting. You know, learning new things is one of the best things ever. It's such a challenge. And thank you so much, Christine. You know, that wildflower meadow, it reminds me of the wildflowers that I've found here in Crestone, Colorado. And it is so beautiful here. And I haven't had time to go and lie in a meadow. And so I had that. And I thank you so, so much. You know, and what you've brought in is a perfect segue. And I thank you. And I invite Michael to put us all in gallery view, all the panelists, because I would like to have a conversation with all of us. But we're going to be talking about this wonderful, broad-ranging subject. But let's start out with, how do you believe our internal state impacts the broader concepts of peace, justice, and economics? And I'm going to start with Erica Kay, because it's been so long since we heard from you. Come on in, Erica.
All right. Well, thank you, all of the presenters who are here, each sharing a different perspective. And it's an honor to be here with you. Jan, I am familiar with your work. And whether you're familiar with mine or not, I too
Not yet, but I'm going to be soon.
I too was a businesswoman. I am a retired architect and architectural interior designer, and have a degree in constitutional law.
There you go.
So it's been a long journey. And what I'd like to bring up now, in a way, deals with psychology, but spiritual at the same time. In that I give thanks every day for all the mirrors who I have seen my own reflection in. Those things which challenged me. I started out my early life as a homeless youth on the streets of New York, being rejected by family, experiencing trauma. So I had much work to do in my own personal healing on this journey. But from those mirrors, at 17 years old, there was one that came in front of me that was so angry and so bitter because of the traumas that we can experience and do experience, many of us. I remember making a conscious choice at 17 that no matter what came, I would choose to remain open with my heart for accepting the good that would come into my life. And from that one decision, that choice, as I've learned that everything is a choice on how we choose to be present in this world. I have been afforded many opportunities to remedy the homeless situation through work and determination, but also with kindness. And as my career grew and I became a leader and a manager, I learned to manage with integrity and honesty and with compassion from a very nurturing point of view with all those who were within my care. that I was required to teach. And changed all sorts of methods as a change maker and a bridge builder, and now as a peacemaker. My husband and I made a choice. We had amassed many assets, and our choice became being of service and utilizing all of our assets for the betterment of humanity. And today I simply show up as a humble servant for our foundation, A Most Perfect Love Foundation here in the state of Washington. And we're working with orphanages, not just to support them financially, but to teach them that they have the power to become truly independent and be the leaders that they were born to be. And it requires coaching and time and love. And then, of course, yes, we support them financially through the work we do. We have other initiatives. I founded Promise Place School for unaccompanied LGBT youth who had been kind of thrown away by their families and found themselves on the street.
Yeah,
So
I'm
it's been
so impressed with your work. Thank you so much, Erica. I see. I know Ken Cohen, and we had an amazing conversation, Ken and I, and so I would like to invite Ken to talk about how our internal state impacts the broader concepts of peace, justice, and economics. Ken, can you speak to that?
I will try my best.
Thank you.
To me, the most important thing with the internal state that will affect all of these other realms is, to put it simply, whether or not we're connected. I see disconnection as the primary source of physical, psychological, spiritual, and I would even add societal disease. So, I mean, for me personally, the things that have put me in touch, made me more connected, and hopefully allowed me to live with more sense of connection, behave with more justice and integrity, is having a regular practice. I really feel that having a regular spiritual practice, whether it's meditation or prayer or art, I mean, whatever poetry, whatever works for you, is so very important if we're going to create harmony in our world. I had two especially important events in my life that taught me about the significance of connectedness. One is when I was about must have been in my early 20s. I was teaching my first Tai Chi workshop. I make my living, my day job, you could say, is teaching Tai Chi and Qigong. And I speak Chinese, and it's something that I love. And one day I was teaching at a workshop center in near Amherst, Massachusetts. And it was snowing outside. It was during the lunch break, and I saw the beautiful big snowflakes, the way they are in New England, just gorgeous. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to go outside and do Tai Chi in the snow? So I put on my hat and gloves and my jacket, and it was pretty cold out, but I thought I could stand out there for 20 minutes and do my Tai Chi form. But something very strange happened. Normally, when I've been doing Tai Chi since I was in my teens, and normally when I practice, I feel it as a kind of expression of life energy flowing through me from a primary reservoir in the lower abdomen, but throughout the whole body. And the Tai Chi movements express that energy. But something happened at that time. I disappeared. I was no longer doing Tai Chi. It was the ground doing Tai Chi. It was the snowflakes doing Tai Chi. It was the sky doing Tai Chi. And I wasn't there at all. My Tai Chi was never the same after that. I can say honestly that every time I've practiced since I was in my early 20s, I feel connected with all that is. So that to me was a transforming moment. And there was one other, if I can just outline it very quickly. I was being tested by a medicine man. I was going through what I call a very strict and rather severe training with a medicine man, also in my youth. And at one point, he told me that spiritual forces would attack me because if they could get control of me, they would control many other people since I was already an educator. And so one night I woke up in my wiki up. I was staying in a wiki up, and I was fully awake. I was sitting up in bed. It was a cot on the ground in this wiki up. And I saw coming towards me a white translucent shadow. And it was terrifying. I tell you, if I had had a knife nearby me, I would have cut a hole in the skins that covered the wiki up and in the other coverings, and I would have run for my life. I tried every trick in the book. I recited the Buddhist triple refuge. I imagined myself inside a quartz crystal. I imagined mirrors in front of me. You name it, I tried it. Nothing worked. But then suddenly I realized that personal power was not the solution, it was the problem. And only the sense of connectedness with all that is could protect me. As soon as I realized that, that spirit, that negative force or whatever it was, absolutely exploded into millions of shards of light and then completely disappeared. So that was my other transformative moment that taught me about the importance of connectedness. So thank you.
Thank you. What an amazing experience. I thank you so much. The internal chaos that we struggle with it does take us out of the interconnectedness. And that is very vivid. I can imagine the power of your emotions at that time. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jen, come on in and tell us how you feel about this subject.
Well, you guys have covered the spiritual piece pretty well.
Yes.
So I'm going to drop into the psychological piece. From my experience, many people have a hard time getting into a practice. They'll sit like 3 or 4 times and they'll be like, oh, I don't like that. Or they'll do Tai Chi or any number of things. And it didn't click in right away. And they just kind of give up. So they have spiritual beliefs, they want to do it, but they can't quite stop all of this. And part of the psychological component is realizing that this isn't real, right? Like you're driving down the road, this happens to me. I'm driving down the road, blah, 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 starts like from 30 years ago. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like I don't sink in. I'm not there for a week now, right? I'm kind of laughing at myself because, wow. And there's physical, Bohm called that a biochemical reflex. It's actually in our nervous system. So we really actually need to reset our nervous system to help reduce those splats of old stuff that come up on us. And the other thing is, and you guys have mentioned shadow work and things like that, to take a look at those past traumas, to take a look at the events that threw you off balance, and maybe you're still not even in balance again. And just layer it off, right? One layer at a time. I give my clients a little tiny rock of mica. It's that super thin silica. I don't know if you guys know it, you can barely get one layer off. And it's like, this is all I need you to do. Just that little, it's thinner than paper, right? And then you're in a while, you'll have this rock, which neither of us can break. So that's all we need, right? We just need to show up. We need to attend to, I'm really mad at my mother today. My mother's been dead for 20 years. But I'm acting as though in my body, all the biochemistry, all the electromagnetic field, the whole thing is though I'm having that fight with my mother that I had at 16. Those are the ways you peel it away. And you still do your sit and maybe only 5 minutes but they come together. So from my view, psychology takes us so far, cleans us up, helps us be able to do those things. And then we want to go as high as we can. And then, that's the spirit component. And you work on both. And you could, like my intuition recently told me, I'm kind of done with the psychology. Like, yeah, I need to stop those thoughts if they come up when I'm driving or anything, but I don't need to learn more techniques or do any of that. I just need to interrupt the patterns as they come, let them fall away, and really focus on that, anchoring that spiritual center.
Our spiritual center is so important, and it's absolutely, having a spiritual practice will help all of us, and especially, may I say, the practical ones. And without you practical ones, we spiritual ones would probably be completely lost and in the air constantly. So thank you so much, Jan, for being here and a part of this conversation. You are essential, and I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm going to change the question for Christine, because you are who you are, and I'm playing with my phone and I'm just having oh God, let me stand on my ear. I'm sorry. And I figured this out while you're speaking, Christine. I want to ask you how we can learn from animals and nature about how to live harmoniously, and if so, what are some key lessons?
It's a beautiful question. I was all ready for the other question.
I'm sorry. You can go.
Okay.
You can answer the other one.
No.
Okay.
I think the answers to the previous question answer this question as well, though, because it is, I'm going to blend the questions.
Good for you.
It is nature. It has been particularly the animal family members in my life that taught me about the power of unconditional love. And to connect and be at a level that family and society perhaps it's not as mainstream. So it is in these practices that have been discussed that, people have said to me, my animal family members come to me when I'm doing yoga, when I'm meditating, when I'm listening to, quiet classical music, when I'm lying still. And I'm like, that's because you're in your natural state of being, and they are most attracted to us in our natural state. And we have other capacities to help inform us. However, we need to recognize what they are for. And a parallel or metaphor that comes to mind is over the years, I've taught many people how to do intuitive species communication. And what they find is that because of all the conditioning and the layers that Jan talked about with the mica, that their human brain, which is here to interpret and keep them safe, interferes and hijacks with the natural process of inner guidance, of inner wisdom, of senses that we have beyond our physical senses. And there are endless ways of doing that. So my sense is that nature is highly connected to all that is, is informed by all that is, recognizes a higher order, recognizes that we are all one. And this is why I shared earlier that they are a power of example. So I'll give you an example of that interconnectedness that was not mine, but it was an experience that was shared. And it's about wildlife, and it's about the prey-predator relationship, that many humans have great difficulty seeing an animal's life being taken. And yet there is an implicit understanding, a deeper awareness and knowing that this is even more than a cycle of life, that at the deepest level, these beings are the same, and that the wolf that kills the bird is the bird that is the wolf, if that makes sense. So because we have, in my experience in working with people, adhered so closely and identified so closely and are so deeply attached to our human beliefs, which are an illusion and separation from the rest of nature, this is what has gotten us into trouble. So I hope that answers both questions, is that they have been wonderful powers of examples, wonderful teachers, helping me melt away all that is human created to coming into what is real and true. And it's still happening. It doesn't stop. I'm not perfect. I don't know it all.
Oh, no. And I thought you did. You know, we're all learning. And it is, you know, we struggle together. And as we are moving further down the timeline, our eternal now is changing and becoming. I do believe that we are becoming more aware of the oneness of the entirety of all that is being co-created experience. And, you know, accepting the things that have now, if somebody else wants to address the question that I gave to Christine, do, you know, give me a wave, because I'm about to change the subject. If that's okay with you. Okay, so I get no naysayers. So because, you know, this world is basically a mess. And I feel it is very much up to the human race, to the human species, to make a difference. And we are so tied up in our own blame shame game that we're unable to see what needs to be done and get it done. That's my perspective. And so I'm going to suggest that perhaps forgiveness may have to be one of our highest priorities. You know, we talk about reconciliation and all of that, but and it's a very important part of peace, justice, and economics. But I don't think we can forget about forgiveness. And I wonder if, Erica, would you like to talk about forgiveness? I imagine that might have been a big subject in your growing up and developing into the person you are today.
Making sure I'm unmuted. I see forgiveness as essential. Yet I also see it happening in unforeseen ways. I know that from my own early years, I didn't feel anger in the sense, don't misunderstand what I'm saying there. Okay. I have buttons like everyone else. But it wasn't an anger that stayed with me. It was a matter of releasing. And I'm going to take us back to what Christine shared from just a bit ago. And I did a social experiment on myself this week. But I want to make time for everyone to be able to share. For me, the animal kingdom, especially the cats, have been my teacher for effective listening.
Yes. Yes.
Where my time in meditation is spent communicating with all life, with the trees, with the animals, with the insects, and listening for the messages that come in, and watching and observing how they interact with each other, and understanding how important becoming an effective listener and seeing that we've all made errors and learning to forgive oneself with the errors that we've made and use them as steps to grow, learning tools in how we choose to communicate in the future. Right now, we're in a very political time with the election coming up, and I had the need for a communication with someone who sees a different place with politics than where my heart is. Yet I knew we needed to communicate. And so I made the choice to go into the conversation and respect where this person was coming from. Even though I didn't agree, I didn't have to agree. These are not my beliefs. These belong to someone else. Yet I honored the human that this person is by listening effectively. And at the end of an hour and a half conversation on the phone with someone who kind of didn't know how the whole thing was going to go, because he had been screamed at, yelled at, put down, condemned. And I chose a different path choice, free will, on how I wish to show up. Not how he was going to show up, but how I needed to show up. We built a friendship. Finding that which we have in common, our commonalities, and coming at it from that perspective, which I felt was a huge step in my own personal growth and moving forward.
That's
And with
beautiful,
that,
Erica.
thank you.
Thank you so much. I think those are good lessons for us all. Thank you so much. Ken, perhaps you have an opinion about forgiveness and maintaining peace and getting along with others, and perhaps why it's so challenging.
I'm still thinking about it.
Oh, no, I don't
Well,
want, I don't
well,
mean to put you on the spot.
no, let me go ahead and
Okay,
speak about it.
sure.
I think one of the things that prevents forgiveness is we become preoccupied with the trauma, the injustice, the heartbreak, whatever it is. So, as some of our other speakers have said, it involves lessening the hold of ego and whatever prevents forgiveness of oneself and of others. I actually went on a vision quest in search of an answer related to this question, that is, what did I need to do on a personal level? What advice could I give others in dealing with personal trauma and injustice, which I had experienced, as we all have, so that I would become and others could become more capable of forgiving. And this is what happened in this prayer vision quest, a period of fasting and praying in the mountains near where I live. I live at 9,000 foot elevation in the Colorado Rockies. That's where I'm speaking to you from. So I received 4 messages. The first is, give the situation up to the great mystery with no thought of outcome. We are not this. There's a spiritual law, you could say, that we don't return negativity for negativity. No matter how difficult the pain, release it up to the wisdom of the great mystery, as though to say, I don't have the wisdom to know what to do with this situation. I release it to you. The second message of these 4 was, don't allow any negative thinking, because whatever caused that trauma or injustice feeds on negative thinking. It's nourished by it. So that doesn't mean to ignore or deny the situation, or to stop trying to understand the situation you're in. But rather, if we're going to find forgiveness and be able to move on to a better life, then we can't dwell in negative thinking. The third is, don't allow even a single shell to form around the heart. And that's a hard one, because people have been victimized so easily become the victimizers. So don't allow a shell of bitterness to form around the heart, no matter how painful the situation you've suffered. Because if you allow that shell to form, then you can't see others and others can't see you. You're living behind a wall. And the last of these 4 messages was, keep the heart fully capable of receiving and giving love. And how do you do that? That's where it differs from person to person. As I mentioned earlier, it might mean listening to music, reading poetry, just spending time in nature, learning from our animal relatives, whatever it is that will keep your heart soft, flexible, capable of giving and receiving love. So those were the 4 messages that I received about how to maintain the capacity for forgiveness.
Thank you so much, Ken. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. And this has been, I really want to touch in with Jan and Christine, and I want to also acknowledge that our time is limited. And so we're going to touch in with them and then invite Lisa Ayers to come and tell us what we're going to talk about in the after chat after we come off of broadcast. So Jan, come and talk to us about what you think about forgiveness.
So most of the people in my life, including myself, had trauma before they were able to say things to themselves like, oh, I'm going to keep my heart open. So how do you, once you're already in that protective place, begin to peel away a little bit at a time. There's the whole Christian piece that I think has a negative connotation. It's like you're just commanded to do it, or somehow it's just going to happen. And I don't find that relevant either. Forgiveness itself is very important, but I think using different words usually works better. And how do you open and allow? I remember one of my guidance one times was allow, allow, allow. And again, not sit there and do nothing. Let it be, let it be, let it be. And again, I'm clearing all this crap as it shows up. So just keep letting it be, just keep letting it be. And just the intention of that and the work of that, right? We already know there's a force of love that comes and helps that along when we keep showing up and keep doing the work. So for me, you would approach forgiveness with other people and myself from a place of, I don't want to be in this bad place. I don't want to be in pain. And what are my steps? Some of them are micro small. Some of them we get big jumps. But you're committed to, well, really, for me, it was peace, right? I'm committed to an internal state of peace. That was my version of forgiveness, because peace also assumes you've had to let it go. Otherwise, you don't have peace. I'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you so much, Jan.
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to the afterglow when we get to talk more with Lisa and the crew. But Christine, come on in.
So when you talk about forgiveness, a very clear example steps forward to me that I'd like to share with people. Last year, after 9 years, I closed my private practice of supporting families with their animal family members. But a majority of the intuitive animal communications were with people initially who had never experienced communication and often used it as a last resort, although that is changing. And they had been carrying around a huge, heavy mantle of guilt for weeks, months, and even years, because they'd euthanized their animal and they weren't at inner peace with themselves because they didn't know whether their animal family member was okay, whether their family member understood, and they felt a great discomfort at making the decision not in consultation with their animal family member, that they in effect played God. Did they do it too early and take a life away? Did they do it too late and were they selfish? And so people suffered immensely, and the experience over and over was their animal family members wanted them to be at peace, and that the humans were missing a piece of the story, and that the humans were creating a story and emotions were created from this story around what they believed to be true. And the animals in spirit repeatedly shared two things: that they were grateful for the support and advocacy because this is not something that they could achieve on their own in the human world, that they are a lot more peaceful about death, and they're here to teach us about to dissolve our misperceptions around what death is. That we do not die. The sun sets and the sun will rise again. It is energy that is never destroyed. It just creates in a new form. And what they do ask, though, because people would constantly still self-judge and attack themselves, the animals were so generous, and they just asked that all we do when forgiveness is really not needed, they felt, is to take forward anything we learned as we move forward. They're not critical and judgmental as we are to ourselves. They are loving and generous and respectful, and they are helping us to expand. They're not solely here for our expansion like some people believe, but I do believe that other beings than human species are far more evolved, And the irony is that we think we are more intelligent, and scientists are trying to improve intelligence in the animal kingdom, and yet they hold so many answers if we only ask them. So this is why I do what I do to bring this forward. So I think what we need to remember in forgiveness is that sometimes the animals have shared, we accord ourselves too much power where we don't have it. It's what Ken talked about around the ego, that it's all about us and all about our actions, when the reality is there is a divine orchestration, there is a higher order of things, and it is not just A plus B equals C as we perceive it on a 3D reality existence. So that's what I wanted to share about forgiveness in a specific capacity, because it is one that so many humans have experienced who have animal family members.
Thank you so much. Christine, you have managed to wrap this beautifully. That's exactly what we need to hear. And thank you so much. All of you, thank you so much. What a beautiful conversation this has been. And I want to invite Lisa Ayers to come in from the conversation background. She's been listening in the watch party, and she is going to be leading us into our afterglow. So, Michael, will you please bring Lisa in? Let's see how it goes. Michael, are you paying attention?
One moment.
I am.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Well, I actually would like to share a message that, or a lesson that I've learned from my animal family members, and that is to forgive immediately. Dogs have a fight, they have a little tiff over something, they walk away from each other, they have a huff, and then they come back and they forgive each other and they say, we're okay. And then the pack is back. And we so often hold on and hold grudges and, oh, what about this and what about that? And animals don't do that. They just get on with it and forgive each other. And I think that's important too. We have a theme of, I think, what we do on the inside reflects what will happen on the outside. I think we've been talking about that a lot today. And we do have a few questions that we're going to go into. Forgiveness and learning techniques is a big one, as well as how we can teach others about the issue. The other thing that I thought was fascinating is that the elders last night at the Wisdom Council were also talking about how the human brain is so dense and the animals are trying so hard. So we might talk about that a little bit as well. So I'll pass it back to Shannon and also ask Marco if he feels it's appropriate now, once we go off the broadcast, to go into a breakout room. Something to think about as we're wrapping up.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa.
Shannon, we've lost your audio.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're back.
Thank you so much. I was saying that I'm really looking forward to being able to talk with you in the afterglow and go more deeper into some of these questions with the people who have been listening with us as we're talking and sharing our ideas. And I'm also looking forward to tomorrow when we have another sparkling
Post-conversation now.
Can you mute, please, Jan?
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. These things happen. I forgive you. And tomorrow I'm going to have another sparkling conversation talking about getting along with Gaia. That's going to be a big question that's going to take some real delving. But I know that the tech people need to do some switch-o, change-o for the next broadcast. And so I'm going to ask us all to say one last word as we exit the room. And we're going to start with Erica. Would you like to have a final say on what we've been talking about today?
I would just like to give gratitude to all of the panelists, but I want to also acknowledge the brilliant team that are supporting all of us here behind the scenes and their dedication, and had many challenges to overcome in the last couple of days. And it's such an honor